Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound. Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard. Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggles of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Liz Bradshaw.
And I am Alrik Brissell.
This week we have two wonderful repeat guests. Repeat for you, not for me, FYI. Writer-director Sean Lynch, cinematographer Gavin Murray, to talk to us about their film Red Snow and what it was like shooting in the snow.
And as it turned out, we didn't have quite enough snow, but luckily, it just kind of worked out in such a way that we got there wasn't enough. We pushed all our exteriors to later and just kept an eye on the 10-day forecast. And then luckily it just dumped on a day full of daytime exteriors where we couldn't fake it, because we faked it in a lot of places where we were able to shovel it into frame and things like that, or just there's a lot of low angles in the movie, which we get away with because it's a horror movie, but a lot of it is hiding. There is just not enough snow on the ground in certain shots.
Special fun fact, pop-up video fact, Alrik was a producer and assistant director on this film. So this will be a very fun discussion. I mean, I don't know. Is that why it'll be a fun discussion, Alrik? Is it because
I think it was fun discussion. It was a fun movie to make, and it was really exciting because I had just made the alternate and then jumped right into making another movie with another group of people, and so it was I was on this movie making high at the time.
A roller coaster of movie making.
Yeah, I got to do two back to back. It was super awesome. And then COVID happened, and now it's well, I mean, we did actually finish the reshoots for that movie, so we did finish it, but it feels less likely for me to be back on set, soon.
In that capacity. Yeah,
but we'll see.
Actually, that's something we don't have to talk about it right now, but it's with the vaccine coming up, are restrictions going to be different, or is it the same? We should get some expert on to talk about that. I'd love to hear.
It's going to be the same, and we could probably bring John Schneider back to talk about this, because I know he's worked on The Mandalorian and WandaVision and some of these other huge shows for Disney recently. And I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but whatever. He's not here. But he's been on huge sets is my point. Even bigger ones that he was on when we had him on the show. So I'm sure he would have answers for that. But my gut is telling me that these restrictions are here to stay for at least the time being.
For a while. Until we're New Zealand. But in other news, Alrik, you have mail.
Breath catches in my chest until I hear three little words. You got mail.
Yes, I do have mail, and I get to talk about it. Very excited that we have another, podcast thing. What's a podcast thing? It's an iTunes review. We have another iTunes review. We'll keep that in. That's fine. Who cares?
Sure.
And this one is from Drew B 2403, and the name of the review is An Essential Podcast for Filmmakers. Making movies is indeed hard, period. Listening to this podcast is not, period. Wow. It's a joy to feel like you're learning right alongside Alrik, Liz, and all their inspiring guests. If you're a filmmaker, listen to this podcast. 5 stars.
Oh, how I wish this were a stranger, but this came out of a straight solicitation from Twitter for me to ask for more iTunes reviews. But thank you, Drewby2403. That was very nice of you to follow our request.
Well, I mean, I don't know Drewby personally.
Right. We don't have brunch with Drewby on a weekly basis. We're not besties with Drewby.
Right. They're just a Twitter friend, which is still an important person. So,
VIP. ATIP. Oh God, that was bad. I'm so sorry. Ooh. But thank you, Drew, for leaving him. We don't have the thing. We don't have the thing that tells people. Let's see if we could do it. Yeah, let's just wing it, right? If you want to be like Drewby, yeah. I'm gonna roll with it. If you want to be like Drewby and you want to support us by writing a review or giving to our Patreon or writing us an email, you could do all those things. How can you do them, Alrik?
Well, if you want to leave us a review, you can go to iTunes or Stitcher to do that part. If you want to send us an email or ask us a question or make a suggestion, you can write to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. I read all of those. I think Liz reads all of those too, because I know that
at least 85%.
if I don't respond to one, Liz will respond to
That's
it.
true.
Like if I don't get to it fast enough. So I know she reads them. Also, if you want to do the other thing that she mentioned, Liz being the she, you can go to patreon.com/MMIH podcast to, support us. Give us $1 a month, $2, $3, $4 gets you this shiny sticker, which maybe Liz is going to bring into frame.
Hold on. It's at the bottom of this. It's here somewhere. Oh, wait. It's underneath a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Cancel
that.
It's been a long time since
there it is. And then if you give us $9, you'll get one of our fancy enamel pins, which I usually have on my desk, but since I moved, I don't have one right now. And yeah, those are the things to do. Oh, and the other really important thing you should do is you go to our Instagram page. Follow us if you haven't already. I'm sure you have. We have so many followers. But if you have it, do that. And then either way, go to our bio, the link there, and then you can go to our YouTube page and be one of our, followers on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. We have like probably 174, I'm guessing, subscribers now or something like that.
Somewhere in that region of numbers.
We're trying to get to 200 probably by now. This is January 4th, so we should have had 200 by now. I don't know if we did, but if we didn't, help us get to 200 and follow us there if you can. And yeah, I think without any more mumbling through things, we should get to this really exciting thing that I think you can talk about, right, Liz?
Yeah, well, get shorty.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
As everyone knows who listens to the show, we like to support shorts creators. And this week we have a film called Hotcake by Debi Bradshaw. And here is Debi to talk about Hotcake.
Hello, Ulrich. Hello, Liz. It's Debi Bradshaw. Thank you so much for having me on Making Movies is Hard. I am honored to be a guest and happy to talk about Hotcake. So, first question is, why this short and why this story? And the answer is that basically I kept having a reoccurring dream about an event that happened to me when I was a teenager. And I went to therapy about that, and I also wrote about it. And my writing became a script. And so I wrote the short and didn't know really what to do with it after that. I come from comedy, improv and sketch and stand-up, so I've produced my own shows. I've written on shows, and my husband and I have collaborated on monologues that we wrote and turned into animated projects. So I knew that world, but this was deep and so unfamiliar. So I was friends with this woman whose husband was a reader at a production company, and I thought, well, he reads a lot of scripts. Maybe he'll have some good advice for me, or maybe he'll tell me whether it is anything. So I wrote him, and then he wrote back and told me that it wasn't anything and that it needed more work. And I said, okay. And I took those notes and kind of just stopped. I just stopped for about 2 years. I didn't look at the script. And as time went on, I reconnected with a friend of mine from college, and she was having a premiere of her short at the Lady Filmmakers Film Festival in Beverly Hills. And I went and saw it, and it was brilliant. She wrote it, she directed, she starred in it. It was so touching, and I really, it's a beautiful film. It's called The Strangeness You Feel, and Jackie Katzman was the filmmaker. And I thought, okay, well, I think I'm going to give her the script and see what she thinks. And so I did, and she told me that I have to make it. And so I said, okay, but who's going to direct it? And she said, you are. And I said, oh, okay. And then I was off. I guess I just needed that little push, and I found another producer, Mike Bush, who I had known from comedy, from Upright Citizens Brigade and Improv Olympic, and he had worked on several shows, and I basically just surrounded myself with people who knew what they were doing. So that was, and they sure did. They were just wonderful. I just thank my crew that were just unbelievably talented, and so yeah, and cast, of course, everybody was just, oh gosh, brilliant. So okay, how did I come up with the funds? Well, I didn't want to do just a regular sit at the phone and ask for money. I wanted to turn it into entertainment. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if this was something people could just watch, just if they didn't even want to contribute money, they could just look at this video. It's funny. And so that's what I did. I wrote a little script and had all my friends and comedians and my family. My brother took part in it, and we all created this video together. That was I paid homage to the MTV at the time. My short is set in the 80s, so that's what I wanted to reflect. And oh boy, it was fun. It was so fun. Willie Laszlo DP'd it. We shot it at Whitney Melton's house in Los Feliz. Shout out to Little Armenia. It was really just a great experience, and just taught me firsthand now, this is okay. I think this is just a little taste of what I'm going to be doing. And it was wonderful. And then I actually did put on a show. We held a variety type thing at a theater with comics and magicians and a band. My sister-in-law, she had a band, and she was there, and she performed, and people did all. It was just so fun, and it raised all the money. So both of those things, and plus there was savings, and we put in the money, and I thank everybody for helping with that. It really was a collaborative effort, and I'm so grateful that we could do it. Before making the short, what did you think would happen to your career? Well, I was acting at the time. That's basically all I knew and all I focused my career on. So I only gave myself a 5-minute role as a waitress, so I really didn't think anything was going to happen with my career. But what did actually happen is it completely changed my career in the fact that it opened me up to all that I'm capable of as an artist. Being a director, a producer, and an actor, and also, but yeah, just everything. When you produce your own work, you put all of yourself in it. I have a 10-year-old child, and I say that this is, Hotcake is also my 2-year-old child, and you nurture it just as much, you give just as much, maybe I'm a bad parent. I haven't talked to Hotcake in a while, so hello. Anyway, it took everything out of me, and that's what you do when you want something to succeed. You give everything, but it was a glorious experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world, because I'm writing now. I'm writing more than I have in my whole life. I wrote a pilot. I wrote a series based on the show, or based on the short, which I want to turn into a show. So I wrote a Bible I want to pitch, and we have pitched it, and we're going to pitch again. I'm writing an animated show right now as well. So I directed a short that will be entering the festival market in 2021, written by Elizabeth Musgrave and produced by Frank Forte, called Sound Man. That I didn't, that's a whole other world that I didn't expect to be in. So directing something I didn't write. And that was glorious and wonderful and fun and hard, very hard. But but very satisfying. So, and also my husband and I are collaborating and have produced another animated short. So yeah, I mean, there's just so much that if you give yourself a chance to just try something different and to go deep, that you never know what can happen. Now it's out, what's the purpose? I don't know if it has a, well, my purpose, I guess, would be for it to be a talking point between men and women. I think at the time when it was shot and when we did this, we weren't really giving, I didn't want a message. I wasn't promoting a message. Maybe I should have. It would have gotten into more festivals. But it was a slice of life of my experience. So I think in a way it was a simpler time. But it's also not what you want to happen to your daughter. So you or anybody, you want, we're all daughters. So we need to talk about this more. We need to tell our sons and our husbands and our friends of how we want to be treated and how we respect each other on that level. So, and it's also nostalgic. So maybe people from my generation will be like, hey, that's the 80s. I remember that when we didn't have cell phones. Would I do anything different now that it's out in the world? It's been out in the world. You know, I thought about that, and I kind of think if I rewrite the pilot, I may give the main character a boyfriend, because maybe that boyfriend could go over to that guy's house, the guy that wronged her, and kick his ass. I thought about that. What would happen if everybody knew each other in the town, you know, and everybody knew what happened to the main character. So that's something that I'm kind of figuring out. And if it gets made into a series, you'll find out. Stay tuned. All right. Oh boy. Okay. How'd you get the performances from your younger actors? Well, I come from a background of like acting. That's my and I'm always trying to go for the most honest. That's when I'm doing anything. I think in life we want to be honest. We want to be truthful. We want to go to the heart of a scene. And so when we were in the moment, I just wanted them to speak from their own truth. And luckily, I had great actors who could do that and could go there. And whether it be a funny moment, a happy moment, a terrifying one, we went there, and they went on the ride, and I'm so grateful for it. I think it's talking to them as if they are the character and what their character would do, because they are that character at the time. And that's the honesty that I got from all of my actors. Yeah, you'll see for yourself if you see it. They did a great job. I mean, really. So, okay, well, that's it. So thank you so much again for having me on the podcast, and stay safe, everybody. Be well. Happy New Year.
Alrik, what did you think of Hotcake?
Well, I loved it pretty much from start to finish. I just thought it was great. It was so unexpected for a short film, for just from the beginning, for a lot of reasons, because it wasn't anything like your typical short. First off, it was in an expensive big location in a school, is the first thing you see, and it's like opening up with like these teenage actors. Another thing you don't often see in short films, usually it's like, if it's made by teenagers, you'll see teenage actors, but if it's not made by teenagers, it's usually, you know, adult actors. And it's set in the 80s. Another thing that you don't always see period pieces in short films. And so I was already like, oh man, like this is more elaborate than your average short. And then watching it, it's also 18 minutes long. This is probably one of the longer short films that we've had on the show. But I watched it in once, like, I think I watched it 4 minutes. I emailed Liz, and then I finished watching it immediately. And it was so good. The acting is great. The story is captivating. it's also, it's not something I would normally be a huge fan of, because it doesn't immediately have a plot that you're like, oh, locked into, like, besides like, oh, is she gonna get into this Israel program or not, that's like the only plot thing that you get in the very beginning. What's it called? It's got a name. It's like that thing that you can do when you're a teenager, like you get to go
Birthright.
to Israel for free. Birthright. Yeah, I'm not Jewish, so I only know a few of my Jewish friends about this.
Ulrich Bursell is not Jewish.
No, but no, let's talk about like the things about this movie. I mean, great performances. I mean, beautifully shot, and it's really well directed, I thought, like, and directed in a way where it felt like this person had been directing for a long time, like with a confidence and like a level of, clarity and perspective that you'd expect from like more of a seasoned filmmaker. And this is her first like real movie. It's like, Debi, come on, are you kidding me? And then the characters felt so authentic, because the dad and the way the dad interacted with the family is like so bizarre. And it's like, this has to be real, because there's no way, where would you come up with the way that he was? And it's like, that just, it screamed like a real, like there's a real person behind the writing of this character. And then the ending of the movie and like the thing that happens that is more plot driven was so crazy, and also like had the best ending, like the way that you want that terrible situation to resolve. It resolved the way that you really hoped it would. And that was really amazing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I didn't really say like a lot of clear things, but I just love this movie. So what did you think, Liz?
No, I 100% agree with everything you just said. Debi and I share a Missouri connection, which I always like to support people from Missouri for some reason. Yeah, it wasn't quippy. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, it's not like other short films. Like it wasn't this like joke or sketch. It was really substantive. And I love the title, and I just love the space that it allowed the audience, because normally you'd be in faster cuts and you'd be a lot more, I would say, economic with every single decision, because you would be, I don't know, trying to be quippier. Quippier is the word I keep thinking. This is not quippy. This is like a thoughtful short film. I really thought it could be a feature. I thought it could have been a kernel of what a feature could be, and a really good feature. Performances were amazing. I guess what I was thinking of is you could take all of these scenes and you could look at them and you could be like, well, nothing really happens. Is this necessary? And it's like they all combine to like a really wonderful tone character piece where you learn. So like something dramatic doesn't happen every single scene, but it doesn't matter because it's a piece of art. Anyway, I just think, like you were saying, in short films, very often there's like this, feels like a race, almost like a race to the joke. And that's not what this was. This was just a good story, well told. I had to walk away while watching it because Alrik made me watch this one and Rehearsal on the same day by Courtney Theron. And they're both like disgusting men. That's like what I've called them, disgusting men shorts. And I just felt really gross after watching both these short films, but that means they were incredibly effective at bringing me into their world and impacting me. So I really want to see the feature Hotcake, Debi. I want you to make it right now and send it in so we could talk about it and support you. Great job.
Yeah, it would be like a female perspective sort of version of that one, gosh, Ben Affleck's in it. It's that 90s period piece. I'm
like going everywhere with that. I'm like, Jersey Girl? No, that's not the 90s.
No,
where are we going?
It's Linklater directed it. I don't remember the name of it right now.
Wait,
I used to watch it a lot.
Not Dazed and Confused?
Yeah. Oh, that's 70s, right?
70s. Yeah, but you're saying like to capture kind of like growing up in the 80s.
But from like a woman's perspective versus a male perspective. Like it felt like it could be like a Dazed and Confused type movie where like this short is like part of the movie, but like not the whole story. It's not like the culmination of the whole thing, but this is just like one of the things that this character deals with throughout the movie, It just felt like that same kind of vibe, and honestly that same kind of level of filmmaking to me, just like that kind of, that sort of coming of age comedy, but not from the male gaze, for once, and you don't really see that a lot, so that was good. The other thing I wanted to say was that it kind of felt like in like, these modern day TV shows, like they'll have like, 10 episodes, but then like one episode will be like the flashback episode that like shows you like what this character went through earlier that informs what they're going through now. I can't remember. I don't know.
This Is Us, kind of. It goes back to
or what was the Aziz Ansari show? Like there's a couple episodes of that show that had like episodes like that where it wouldn't even be like the main cast would be in it. It would be like the younger versions of those characters, going through different things. But yeah, I felt like that. Like it could fit into like one of our, a show where it'd be like, oh, this is like what this one character went through when she was in high school. This is why she has this thing that she does now, or whatever. This is why she hates cake or loves cake or whatever. But Debi, fantastic job.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch this movie. It only has 400 views online. Like, what the hell, dude? This movie deserves so much more.
We're big fans.
Yeah. I was watching some other shorts. I think we talked about this last time, but like, yeah, it's like just going through and like they'll have like 70,000 hits, 80,000 hits, and they're like garbage. Or not garbage. That's not fair. Like they look pretty and they like look really beautiful, but there's no real story and there's no real character to dig into. And it's like, why do I care? Everything can be pretty, but not everything can make me care about the characters. Like I care about the characters in this short, it was.
Oh my God, why
really
did her friend leave her? Why did her friend leave her? It drove me crazy. Still upset by that. Oh, her
yeah, because her friend is like a, completely, first off, they're teenagers, so they're not the smartest. And then they're just like, she's in her own little world, Yeah, that was really scary. And that's another thing about Debi as a filmmaker. She like really freaked us out.
Yes.
And that's hard to do. It's not like easy to like just freak out your audience, on your first real short film. So anyways, Debi, sorry, we're praising you too much, but great job.
Deserves it.
Yeah,
that's it. We did it. We did the thing where we talk about stuff before an interview.
Now, I think we should go to our real conversation about Red Snow with Gavin and Sean.
Red Snow. Well, before we get into it, we got to do our stat sheet, Alrik.
Oh, yes, the stat sheet. I did do a stat sheet. Well, we have the questions at least. Liz, you want to take it?
Yeah, so it's kind of this like rapid fire question round where we ask you invasive questions about your production and you decide whether you want to answer them or not. So, starting up, how many days did you shoot?
12.
Alrik, you.
What was the rough budget? And feel free not to say if you don't want to.
But say it.
It's hard to say because we're still in the process of making it. But I'd say ballpark like 40K will probably be 50K by the time everything is done.
Amazing.
Wow.
How long did you work on it from inception to eventual release? Can you anticipate how long you will have worked on it until the release?
Probably 2 years, all in.
And then how many people were on set? I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you guys anyways.
Let's see, crew is 11. And then talent kind of fluctuated. Like, most of the time it was 2 for talent, but I think it all in there are like 6 or 7 talent, but they'd sort of come and go. So pretty small, all in all.
I think our biggest day was maybe 15 people, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe 16, but yeah, right around there. All right, Liz, final question.
Final question. Think about it with all your hearts. Out of all your projects, how difficult was this one? And let's also like make Alrik feel bad since he worked so hard to protect and take care of the ship.
I don't know, Gavin, do you want to field that?
It wasn't the hardest. It wasn't the easiest. There was some challenges that we knew were coming, and those challenges were challenging. Night exteriors with a micro budget is tough.
Especially in the snow. Like
Yeah.
summer nights in the snow.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal, but all in all, I think like the great thing about this movie is, and this is probably something we'll say again and again, is like the crew was just so great. Everyone got along really well. Like there was no like problem person on the set necessarily. Like everyone kind of knew what they were getting into, more or less, that we were going to be kind of isolated out in the snow and, you know, on a pretty tight budget. Really, like at 12 days to shoot a feature is kind of insane, but we did it. And yeah, I think I'd agree with Gavin. Like it's not it's not even the hardest feature that I've worked on, but it was also, you know, it had a lot of challenges too, just because of the schedule and the budget and the conditions.
I mean, I was going to say no problem people other than Alrik, and then I was going to put you on the spot to ask what it was like working with him.
Alrik was a dream. Alrik kept the wheels on the bus, for sure.
Yeah, he's a little guardian angel. It was...
Oh. I was going to ask, like, should I answer that question since I was on the film too?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the most difficult by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't say it was easy either, but I think things just went really well, and we all worked really hard. And you know, I saw a smiling director like 95% of the time. So to me, like that is like job well done, you know. And we got all our we got everything that you really wanted. Like we only cut like just like a small amount, but like there are kind of things that you didn't really feel like you needed at the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, like it would be like the thing that comes to mind is like we had this idea that we needed the main character like shopping for this sweater that appears later in the movie, and which would have been like a company move. We probably would have had to steal that shot, and we were overall really good about actually getting permitted for all our stuff, which is amazing at this budget level.
Yeah,
I credit you with that, Alrik, keeping
thanks,
us
man.
honest. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, we get that she went out and bought a sweater because we see it later. Like those kind of things that are like very inessential got cut. But otherwise, yeah, we got everything that was needed, except for this pickup day that was always planned as being part of the deal.
Right, which we needed. Like I guess, you know, when we left the movie, I was planning on working with you on this like by now and like setting up dates and everything. But then all this stuff happened, and then we just haven't even talked about it. But we should have this conversation later and see like when do you want to try to do this thing? June?
Yeah, I mean,
May?
at this point, it's who knows? Like June, July, like.
Yeah.
I want you to say June because I have a shoot in June. And so I want us all to will this into being, that we can shoot in June. Can we all think that way on this recording?
Yeah, we'll be shooting
for this
in June.
recording.
Yeah.
And in general, I want that to be the truth. I mean, if we can't do a shoot of any kind by June, this will be like way worse than I thought it was.
So just to clarify roles, so Sean, you directed, and Gavin, you were the DP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about working with snow, maybe from both perspectives? I mean, as the DP, Gavin, did you have to take extra precautions for your equipment, for your team? Or what is, I've never worked in the snow in a film.
So this was my second time working in Tahoe. So I had done it a bit, but I had not done nights in the snow yet. So I did take a lot of precautions. My AC, Lance, kind of kept me from feeling most of them. I just kind of passed them all on to him. But the big things to think about is in the cold, batteries go really fast. So we had an excess of batteries. We also kept them in a little warming pouch with like little hand warmers to try and keep them from getting too cold. And then there's also a thing that I know I panicked Alrik and Sean with about lenses adjusting the temperatures, going from outdoor in the cold to indoors where it's warmer. If you don't give them the time to acclimate, they can fog up and it can be a real problem. But again, like our crew moved in such a way that we never felt it, I don't think. I don't know, maybe Alrik and Sean did, but...
I mean, that never was an issue, right? The fogging never became a problem, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, like I said, Lance was on it, and we always used that time to be setting up the next scene. So we were always trying to stay a step ahead.
Yeah. What I'm curious is, like, Sean, you know, like making a movie called Red Snow and working on it for so long beforehand, because you basically prepped for like a year, like on and off. Like, what was your approach to the snow, and how did you set us up for success with this whole thing?
I mean, there isn't really like a scientific way to predict how much snow you're going to get. I was really just like basically, this is basically, I don't know if this has come up, but we shot this at like a family cabin that we've had in our family for a long, long time. So I'd been going there in the winters, like since I was a little kid. And I generally knew the rule of thumb is like January, there's almost like too much snow. Like you need to put on chains to get out there, and there would have just been huge logistical challenges. And then February is kind of, like easing down a little bit. So I sort of felt like February, March, we'd have like just the right amount of snow without, being unsafe. And as it turned out, like we didn't have quite enough snow, but luckily like it just kind of worked out in such a way that we got there wasn't enough. We pushed all our exteriors to later and just like kept an eye on the 10-day forecast. And then luckily it just dumped on a day full of like daytime exteriors where we couldn't fake it, because we faked it in a lot of places where we were able to like shovel it into frame and things like that. Or just, there's a lot of low angles in the movie, which we get away with because it's a horror movie, but a lot of it is like hiding. There is just not enough snow on the ground in certain shots. But beyond that, I think my main concern going in was just making sure it was safe, like making sure, Sarah, our costume designer, and Melanie, our makeup person, like we're always like kind of nearby with coats to like throw on, especially talent, because they're kind of the, like crew can wear as many layers as they want, but talent are limited in that regard. And just like Alrik did a great job of just like rushing out like hot soup and hot drinks to people, and just having that sort of thing on standby, like having hand warmers, having like the Ranahan rentals were huge, having the propane heater and the pop-up and that sort of thing, especially on those exteriors, like those overnights. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like once you are out in the snow, like a lot can go wrong, and I'm just really glad that nothing seriously did go wrong. And I think a lot of that is just the preparations we took.
Here, let's set up a little context for people, just because like, so what happened, so we got there was no snow, we pushed all our exteriors, and then the way that we had one of our weeks set up was like we had to shoot these days in order, and this movie has a like exterior fight scene in the snow, an exterior night fight scene or action sequence in the snow, and I think two of them in the snow at night, I believe. And so with like special effects and all this stuff. And so basically the way that it worked, like we had these days for like the bigger exterior shots and we couldn't move them. And then, it went from there being no snow to like us getting snow like right like on our fight day. And we were like, oh, what are we going to do with our daytime exterior day in the snow when it's snowing? I was like, well, we just have to just do it. And that's when like I decided to make a big pot of soup, and just like we had tons of hand warmers, we had jackets, we had everything, but we just like we're doing everything that we could to make sure people were warm. But Sean and Gavin, you guys want to talk about that day and like what that day ended up looking like?
Yeah, I mean, on my side, I mean, my perspective was like that snow couldn't have come at a better time. Like basically we had these out of town actors, Laura and Alan. Alan came we were shooting in 4-day weeks, 3 4-day weeks. And our second of those weeks was with these two actors, and we only had them for 4 days. And Alan came on that first day. It was just him, and it was a scene between Alan and our lead Denise outside, like he said, all day. And so like that was the only day we could shoot that stuff, because once Laura showed up, we needed to get all her stuff, because they're sort of like a pair in the movie. And so it just had to be that day. Like there was no moving things around. So like, yes, we probably got more snow than we would have liked, but I think, at that point, it sort of came at the perfect time also, just because we were working so much quicker at that point. We were like more of a cohesive team. I don't know. What do you think, Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, we spent, because we couldn't actually shoot in the snow, we had a lot of time to kind of map those out too. Like I know in the Scout, we planned that all out. And then on the day, like Alrik made these maps of like no-go zones where it's just like, don't walk through these areas because you'll leave footprints, and we need powder here. And so we had already planned out exactly like what the routes we were going to take, what our backups were when there wasn't enough snow in certain locations, or And it just like kind of definitely honed in. It kind of made it feel like, people talk about shooting on film that like everyone has to take the time to respect the process, specifically because you don't get that many takes at it. And that was kind of the way that I felt like we had to treat the snow.
Yeah, can you talk I know we don't have makeup on this call, but could you talk a little bit about, I mean, it's called Red Snow, so I assume there's blood, there's gore. Can you talk about the way you guys executed that on a low budget in the cold with all these other restrictions?
I mean, a lot of it was just, we had Melanie Leandro, who is awesome and like really great at her job, and and I think that a lot of it came down to the prep. Like Gavin and I had already shot listed the entire movie, and so we kind of knew what angles, and I'd sort of edited it in my head a little bit. So when I approached Melanie about doing it, I was kind of like, yeah, you have a very small budget to do this, but like, let's talk ideas. Let's talk about how each thing is going to be framed. Like, and there's some crazy gore effects in this movie, like beyond anything that I've ever done, even on like a much bigger budget movie. I mean, there's tubing with like blood spray because it's a vampire movie. Like, you need tons of blood. The vampire effects themselves, like we had a funny thing happen where, Melanie asked me what I wanted these eyes to look like, because when they're in like vampire mode, it's basically contact lenses, the teeth, and makeup. There isn't really any prosthetics beyond that, but for the contact lenses, I always pictured them as being sort of like milky white, kind of like opaque eyes without even a pupil, really. And we had those, and on the first day that Nico, our lead vampire, was wearing them, he was just completely blind. And this is on the second day of shooting. Right. And so Nico's first day was just, we had to like lead him around. And it was like that was kind of one of the bigger scares we had, because his first day didn't really call for any action necessarily, but we had to quickly order contact lenses that our vampire actors could like see out of. And then, but luckily Melanie was able to get those really quickly, and we were able to kind of, rewrite this idea that, the vampire eyes are totally opaque when they're like wounded, which ended up being the case. Like, when we first see Nico's character, he's like depleted of blood and wounded, so it tracks. Like, it was like a 13th hour script adjustment, but it explains why there's like a discrepancy in the eyeballs without really like saying that.
That was totally smart for you to do it that way and just rewrite it, and it was really lucky that it worked timing wise.
A lot of creepily like just lucky breaks on this movie. And then I guess, I don't know, Alrik, should we talk about the head, or is that like a big spoiler for this movie?
I don't know. It's up to you. I mean, the fact that the movie has a head rip, I don't think is a spoiler. But it was really
your
fun.
Involvement in it. Well, let's just talk about it. I think if you're
Sure.
listening to this podcast, you want to know the nuts and bolts of how this movie got made.
Right.
So there is, I think the most complicated effect, and Melanie would agree, is there's a decapitation scene where a person played by Alrik gets his head ripped off by a vampire and then drinks out of the severed head. And so before we shot a frame of this movie, Melanie got together with Alrik and did a life cast of his head. I haven't really talked to you what that process was like, Alrik. What was that like?
Yeah, so I had done this a bunch for my own movies, but never did I ever have to do it. I went one time where I like hung out with an actor while it happened, and then another couple times I sent actors to have it done, but I never had it done to myself before. And yeah, it's kind of a lot. It's a big ask. It's a much bigger ask than I thought it was after asking people to do it for my own movies. So basically, you have to be sitting with your shirt off, and then they pour a certain liquid over your head, and then that but first they wrap they basically mummify you, right? I guess is the best way to put it. So they put this plaster down to mummy you, and then they put the goo over, and then you have to sit for 10 minutes 20 minutes with the goo on your head, and so it can take a form, and you have to make the same face that you're gonna make that you want when you're dead, and you have to hold that face. And we had to do it outside because she didn't have room to do it inside in her apartment, and it was really cold that day, so I was out in the cold with this thing happening. And it was like it was more like 3 or 4 hours that we spent doing this. And it was tough.
Alrik, how was it you? Like, how are you chosen for this exciting opportunity?
Well, Sean, do you want to answer that question?
My perception of that was that you volunteered, but we knew that. I knew that I wanted crew. I mean, my original idea is like all 3 of these victims in this scene would be played by crew. At the end of the day, It ended up just being Alrik being the only crew member, and we got 2 locals to play the other roles, which I think was for the best. Like, I remember one time Ryan, our gaffer, was up to play one of them, and like Gavin was like, "No, that's not going to happen," which is smart in hindsight.
Absolutely not.
Definitely. Well, so my memory of this whole thing was that you came to me and you were like, I want crew to play these guys, and then I'm going to play one of them, and then I'm going to get my head ripped off because I'm fine donating the time to do the thing. And I was like, you can't be the person to have your head ripped off. Like, that's too big of a, like, you have to be like on monitor and directing that scene. Like, you can be one of the other ones, but you can't be the head rip person. And so then I just volunteered because I was like, you need somebody, like, we need to do it like now or soon. So I just volunteered to do it. And Sean was open to that idea.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked me out of that, because that was far and away our hardest day, at least for me. Because that was overnight. That was a 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. thing with gore effects, with the most talent we had out of in one day. Like, it was a ton of like logistical challenges.
So
yeah, it was crazy.
We talked to Ken Frank and Chris Malika a few weeks ago, and they described the way of filmmaking as kind of like a family, right? Like, they do these micro budget shoots with their like brother-in-laws, their best friends, and it's remind me a little bit about what you guys are doing. I mean, you guys are working on an extreme lower budget, and then you went to one location that you already had access to, and then you made a horror film. So I guess I want to know what your philosophy is of filmmaking. Is that too large a question after talking about getting your head examined for practical effects?
I don't know. What do you think, Alrik?
Gavin, do you want to answer this question?
I mean, I can hop in. I don't know if it's like a grander philosophy. It's just that it's a bunch of people like-mindedly enjoying like a script or story. And the micro budget just kind of weeds out people who might be less interested, I think. Because everyone who's on this project, really had to like the story, or at least the people involved. I think they like the story. But, it's just a bunch of, we all had to live with each other in like, I think we had 2 cabins total, maybe 3.
Yeah, two officially. A third was just someone decided to get their own space, basically.
Yeah, and, everyone had to be there because they liked being around each other enough to last for, like the 14 days with the days off, and cared enough to tell this story that was going to involve people being out overnight. So, like, a lot of us were already basically family or really good friends, and I think everyone, got along enough to, like, stay that unit during. But the reason we were all out there was to tell a fun story.
Yeah, I think Sean and I talked about this a while before we went and made the movie. It was just like, this is the type of movie that we're making. This is what we need to do. Like, Sean always wanted to have crew on that were like understanding of the situation and willing to make a movie in this way and down to do it. And so everyone that I suggest to be on the crew, Sean would always be like, do they know what the situation is? Are they cool? Are they into this kind of filmmaking? And like, the answer was always yes all around. And we just got really lucky that we got great crew who were just down for the cause. And a few people were already friends and had worked together before, which I think helped a lot. I mean, Sean and Gavin have known each other since college, which I think really helps. So I think it was just like getting the right group of people together, and just, bringing a little mini family together to make a movie for, a couple weeks. It was great. I don't know. I think it is kind of it's not like a philosophy on like a grander sense. I don't think. I think it's more like a philosophy around a project. And Sean, I think I don't know. I'm sure you're aware of this. Like, you kind of had like this idea of like how you wanted the movie to go. And that was sort of what you passed on to us. And I think we just pass that on to everyone else. And is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think the thing that I really wanted people to know up front, like, I think the term I used with you is like, are they a culture fit? Like, you know, because I'm sure we could get amazing crew, but you know, most shoots are like, you know, you work 8 to 12 hours, then you go home. And this is not that. You stay on set. Like one of the cabins that people were staying in was a hot set. And, you know, and also like everyone's working for much less pay than they deserve because, you know, it's a $50K budget. And so really it comes down to like, are you willing to go to camp? Do you like love doing this? Are you willing to kind of put your life on pause? And that's a huge ask. And I just wanted, you know, to be respectful of people and like just let them know this is what you're getting yourself into. But if you're into this sort of thing, I think you'll have a lot of fun. And I certainly had a lot of fun, speaking just for myself. And I think other people did too.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I think everyone had fun. It was a pretty fun, happy set, I would have to say, overall. Right, Gavin?
Yeah. No, and I mean, I just wanted to pop in and say, I similarly, anyone who I asked to come on, which, you know, was like Emily and Ryan, our Genie team, and Lance, I asked like 3 times with just like are you're sure, right? Like, because I am asking a favor. I would love you to be there if you're down. And like, I think Ryan even had to be like, dude, stop trying to talk me out of this. I'm there. Like, this sounds great. Let's do it.
Right. Gosh, I had another question, but I think the thing Liz, you got something?
Well, I just was my follow-up was it a bunch of diehard horror fans, or was it just friends and family who wanted to support Sean and Gavin and Alrik?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there were definitely some horror fans, but it was mostly just like crew that one of us had a connection to, and them being down to come out and make the movie, I think is the best way to say it, you know? And there were some definite horror fans and horror nerds, but I think it was mostly people who just really like making features and really were into coming out and doing this movie. I don't know. That's probably fair, right, Sean?
Gavin? Oh yeah. And we got so lucky with every single one of those hires because, I mean, just off the top of my head, you know, Steven Lagash, our sound guy, like he was in a really tricky spot because we didn't have the budget for a sound mixer and a boom op. It was just a one-man band. And that's a huge ask already. And then on top of that, it's like, you're not going to see your wife for like 2 to 3 weeks. You're going to drop everything. You know, and I mean, everyone was in a similar situation, but I think of Steve in particular as just like that's such a huge ask of a person, and for him to come in and have like a great attitude and you know, and that was true across the board. You know, just like we really lucked out with these people.
He was also our last hire. Like we had everyone but the sound person, and then it was like trying to get the sound person in like a month away from our shoot date, and then, you know, luckily he agreed. And like I had worked with Steve a couple times. Like he was on 2 days of the alternate. One says a boom and one says a sound mixer. So I knew that he had the chops for sure. And then he's also friends with Ryan, our gaffer. And so it was kind of like lucky. And I don't know, I hope they don't mind me saying this, but like basically when Steve heard that Ryan was on, he's like, I'm in. Cause like they had already worked on a feature before and shared a room together in a feature. So like they had already gone through a kind of experience, and he was like, oh, I know that I'll get along with at least one person. It's like, okay, let's do this. Let's go, to quote Steve. That's what his favorite thing to say.
That was also really fun in terms of the family unit thing as well. Our days off were blasts because it was all of us up in Tahoe, blissfully already separated from the general populace that might be getting sick. And but going sledding and like having snowball fights and Nerf guns kind of took over our days off too, and lots of puzzles and video games. And you know, there was no TVs in the cabin, but we just turned the monitors into little setups and had like Mario Kart tournaments and stuff. It was great.
Yeah. Steve, Ryan, and Lance would play these long board games, like at least in the beginning. Like they played this game Scythe for like 4 hours, I think, after shoot one day. And like Sean, you got wrapped in with them a little bit, and then like you're like, I have to go and prep.
Yeah, well, because we would have our meetings right after our shoots each day, and it's like I remember spending like 2 hours with them on, or maybe like I don't know, maybe like an hour and a half just like learning the rules of Scythe, and it's like my time to like do recreational activities is now over. And I now have to get back to work. And so by the time I got down, like they'd figured it out and were then masters of the game, and it's like, oh man, I missed out. But like I think my big thing was just like making sure that morale never, because I think that's an important thing on any film set, but especially when you're kind of like going to camp, is just making sure like people are happy, especially given how few days off there were. And I think that everyone like found ways to entertain themselves, which is all I was really asking for.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the snow really quick, because we touched a little bit about the snow day where it snowed during our one of our action sequences, but we didn't really talk about what that day was actually like. And I mean, I know for Sean and Gavin, you guys got a lot done and you were really focused. But like the beginning of the day was kind of intense logistically. And so I don't know, Gavin, and you ran out like, so first we started at 5:30 a.m. And like as soon as the sun was bright enough, Gavin ran out and grabbed a wide exterior shot of the cabin with like snow everywhere, basically. And in order to do that, had I moved the cars yet, Gavin, or did you just frame out the cars? I can't remember.
I think we did both. I know that on top of me trying to just grab exteriors where we could, we had a full day. So it was kind of just grab what we can while we're setting up the other things. And that's like on this type of shoot, on most shoots in general, like I try and leapfrog as much as I can. It's harder with such a small G&E team on this one, but they both killed it. And so it would be like we only had 2 people. We had 2 keys basically that really were kind of mixing departments because they had to. But it was like I'd have someone on set with me, someone would be setting up the next area, and just as much as we could do to get ahead, which included sometimes me just going off and shooting like little tiny pieces. Like I know our what do you call it, title sequence that Sean had planned was just like little snippets of parts of the house that I'd just grab randomly throughout. Like Sean would point one out, or I would just grab them, and I'm sure he's discovering them in post. I hope there's enough. And yeah, just because we had so much to cover in 12 days that it was just anything we can do to get ahead.
Yeah. So that morning, like I just want to talk about it. I mean, I don't know why I care so much, but it's because like, okay, so Gavin, after Gavin got that exterior, Gavin and Sean are inside, and they're like focusing on getting these couple interior shots done before we
sorry
move
to interrupt, Alrik.
Go ahead,
one thing
go
we
ahead.
should point out before you get into this: when it's snowing in Tahoe, you cannot park on the street.
Right.
Like you have to be in a driveway. You have to be, because the snow plow comes through like periodically, and so that was a huge logistical challenge. Like parking.
Right.
I mean, it ended up being, I guess, less of an issue when the snow wasn't as heavy, but that day it was like a huge problem.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, Sean. Like, part of the reason why this was so hard was because we couldn't park any cars on the street, and we had to park all cars in driveways. And on the days that didn't snow, we could park cars on the lawn of Sean's house, or Sean's family's cabin. But like, we also got the neighbors to allow us to use their driveway to park cars, so we kind of were covered. But then when you had to get a shot of the cabin with no cars in it and like just set for picture or whatever, we had to put the cars somewhere. And so basically at 5:30 a.m. after it snowed probably around 6 inches or something, we had to move all these cars to a parking lot down the street.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So that was like insane. And we had already moved like one big van the night before, like, and that was really great. But we had 3 cars we had to move. Like we had to move a truck, my Prius, and then one other car, in order to have the grip truck have room to move out of the driveway so that like they could get a shot of the front of the house. And so like moving these cars at like 6 a.m. in the morning through the snow before the plow came was crazy. Like me and Steve and I think Olivia, our production coordinator, it was the 3 of us doing this thing together, and it was like an adventure. We saw a bear, we were like sliding and going all over the road. My Prius like wouldn't move for the longest time, and then we finally, like, Steve had to push it while I was reversing in order to get it out of the driveway. It was kind of madness. And all while Gavin and Sean are inside, like getting the shot ready. And I think you guys got some shots off while we were doing that, which I was really grateful for. But it was nuts. And then once we got that out of the way, then we had some more stuff to do outside in front of the house. But then the timing for us worked out perfectly because we got some shots of the car driving in the snow before the plow came, and the car that we had chosen for the picture car happened to have snow tires and all-wheel drive. So it was so lucky because that was the one car that could drive on the snow without the plow having come through. So it was just a lot of luck, I think, in that case.
Yeah, Marcella's Mercedes ended up being like it's funny because at first I was like, does this make sense for the character, like for him to have this really nice car? But it ended up being like the only car that could have possibly done that segment of the movie.
Right. And like, we got the shot of the car driving off in this direction with like this beautiful kind of like untouched snow with just like a few car tracks in it. And it was so perfect. And then as soon as we move into our close-ups, the plow comes, and the plow took all the snow out and made it easier for us to get around, but it didn't affect our shot anyway. So we got these beautiful like wide shots of like all this winter wonderland. And then we move into our close parts where it didn't really matter that the continuity had changed. It was just like all this crazy timing stuff that just worked out really well that day. And then, we got into our actual blood effects and action sequence and shooting a crossbow and all this crazy stuff we had to do in the snow. And I don't know, somehow that day worked, and it was kind of amazing and magical that it happened. And it was a challenge.
It definitely felt miraculous, especially when I know everyone else wasn't panicking as much as I was in that moment, but like the snowplow did like what felt like 20 loops. It just kept coming back. And, we couldn't do any sound with that going on. Man, it was definitely an adventure. And just like, even after it came, we had thankfully like a small amount of spills and no one walking with anything ever fell.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it left a pretty slick street underneath that we really had to move very carefully on. Not that we didn't in the high snow, too. I know there was definitely some just like you step in the wrong place and you're going to fall through quite a bit.
Yeah, I fell and split my clipboard in two pieces. And luckily, the production manager, Marcella, she had another one, and then I stole hers for the rest of the shoot. But yeah, that was crazy.
I think also just key to making that day and just throughout, like making these crazy days where we would shoot like 10 pages in a day or things like that. I mean, on that day we're talking about right now, it was fewer pages, but it was just as many shots because it's a huge action scene outdoors in the snow. And I think key to that was Gavin and I, going through originally on the location scout, but then continuing like, over FaceTime or whatever, just like shot listing every little piece, so we knew every little thing that we needed, and like actually more or less sticking to that. I mean, we would improvise and decide to cut things here and there, but I think like of all the movies I've worked on, I credit Gavin with this in a major way, is like I felt very prepared going in and kind of having it pre-edited, and like I think that was so huge for something like this, especially on this day where it just like it's all just like getting these little tiny pieces of coverage that you need for it to make sense in the edit, like just close up of the crossbow firing, and then you whip pan off frame, and then getting the other side of that whip pan with the gore gag in place. Like knowing how we're gonna do all these gags in advance is like it might seem like like filmmaking 101, but I did not feel that prepared on my first feature. I felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants on my first feature, and I think that having that level of preparation, this movie just wouldn't work without it.
Well, that's also something that like not only did we do it on the day or like every night before too, and Alrik kept us to it, was every day the night before the shoot after we wrapped that day. Everyone was off the clock, but it would be you, Alrik, and I, and then occasionally Melanie too, when there was more effects heavy, would meet up in the production office and go over the next day, and that involved like I think Alrik and I blocking, like, as humans for you to move around, and just as much communication as we could get because we spent so little time on set.
Yeah, those meetings were really important. It was like, you know, just to Sean's point about the prep was amazingly important in this project, and the only way that we were able to get it done the way that we did, because you know, walking into it, Sean had, like you said, the whole movie shot listed, but also like a rough schedule for each day already in place. So like there was already a rough schedule before I even stepped into it. And so then I was just able to move pieces around and like do rescheduling with Sean and like figure out the best order to do everything in. So it was like a big part of it was already handled. And then it was just like kind of moving the pieces of the puzzle around, you know? And then when we did those meetings, it was like, okay, we already know what we're going to be shooting that day, but like, okay, let's make sure that we give the right amount of time. And I usually would already have like a rough idea of time for the whole thing, because I was able, since I had the shot list and since I had the schedule, I was able to do, or this rough like strip board, I was able to kind of pre-schedule each day in advance. So like we were so prepared because we were able to do that prep and just have a good idea of what we wanted to do every day. And that's how we were able to like average like something like 30 to 40 shots a day. And sometimes going over 40, like damn near 50, I think, a couple times. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, we looked at 30 shots in a day as like a light day.
Yeah, seriously, like 30. Yeah, it was really more like somewhere between 40 plus on the bigger days. It was a lot.
I realized, I know this theme of this episode is like, how do you work in the snow and all the cool variables that you all had to deal with. And I never followed up with Gavin on the impact of snow on the ground bouncing on actors' faces. Can you talk a little bit about that, Gavin?
Sure. Honestly, when it comes to snow, like, and the look of this movie specifically too was more or less naturalistic. So, you know, just kind of this heightened kind of naturalism. We looked at a lot of movies in the 90s as like examples, but with the idea that we would tone the 90s aesthetic way down. So, you know, shooting in the snow was more, we were letting things play in safe. We'd add negative at times or add positive at times, depending on how much snow there was supposed to be on the ground when there wasn't. But like, I tend to, you know, just protect the highlights a little bit more with snow, but not worry about it too much in terms of like, you know, especially if you're going to have wides, you can't do that much on a lower budget and with like a smaller amount of time to really change that. So it's more painting with broad strokes and allowing, you know, snow's going to look like snow, and that's okay. And at night, you know, that's just a little bit more of ambient. Your light's going to carry a little farther. And so I remember the first time I shot in snow, I was pretty worried about it because of the levels, just a bunch of white everywhere. But there's a lot more gradation than you think. And when you're there on the day, that's not as much of a challenge as you might think it would be, in my opinion.
It's really interesting. Yeah. And also you were talking about filling in where the audience expects there to be a bounce. Like I forgot that you didn't have an abundance of snow on the ground every single day of the shoot. So it's like making it consistent and making it continuous. Even when you did have brown on the ground instead, or green on the ground instead of white. And that's really interesting. And then, Sean, just one final question for you. I know we haven't talked a lot about distribution and your expectations, but was making this film on such a low overhead and making it horror comedy part of the design for a good return? I mean, this is not your first feature. You've gone to the rodeo before, or was it just the script that called to you?
I mean, really, at the end of the day, yeah, like horror is a super commercial genre, especially at this budget level. But my main thing is like, horror is my favorite genre, and it always really has been. And I almost look at my first feature, Prep School, which was a drama, as almost being sort of a weird detour. Like for some reason, I really, really out of film school wanted to make that movie. And then once I got it out of my system, I was kind of like, wait, why did I do that over a horror movie, since it's so much harder, like you said, in terms of distribution? But yeah, you know, I have learned a lot, and you know, I think, you know, I can't help but think about distribution on the other side of this, especially since I myself have so much exposure in the budget. But you know, there's certain things that you think about. Like I think it is, I could easily see this playing at a genre festival like a Scream Fest or Beyond Fest or Fantastic Fest. That's kind of the plan, depending on how our post timeline goes. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. And also, we haven't talked about it at all, but we have one name actor in the movie who's sort of a cult actor, Vernon Wells, who is in like The Road Warrior and Commando. Like, having any kind of name in your genre movie just makes it that much more valuable, because you're able to say, because the first thing that people ask is like, oh, who's in it? And a name like Vernon Wells, who's in these like huge cult classic movies, like that only helps you more. So yeah, I mean, I think that to answer your question, it's basically like I made this because I just really wanted to make a horror movie. And I think just applying the lessons that I learned from my first film, keeping it small, having a name actor in it, like working with people that you want to work with and that want to be there, and just having some idea of the kinds of places that you're going to take it to and like what the audience is. I think that that's pretty big.
Yeah, and the thing that I really enjoyed about this script in the beginning and just the movie that we ended up shooting is that you really delivered on all those things that you expect from a horror, vampire, comedy, Christmas movie. And giving the audience those things that you would want from seeing a movie with those sort of buzzwords or that synopsis, I think was really smart. And I'm really excited that we were able to do that, especially with all the blood gags and just the way that you orchestrated the whole thing. I thought it was really well done.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Well, that's why I wanted to make the movie. I think it is, like we were talking about earlier, like, why did people come out and do this? It's like, well, it's because of the story. And like, that was why I said yes to you, like over like almost a year ago, was because it's like, yeah, the script is so awesome. Like, of course, I have to help make this movie, because it just was like, I wanted to see it. I wanted to go to a theater and watch this movie, or watch it on VOD or wherever I'm going to be able to watch it, I wanted to talk about one more thing, but I kind of feel like we're running out of time. Yeah, I'm going to ask it anyway. So, so that night exterior snow blood thing, I mean, walking into it, I was like, oh, we'll have some lights up and we'll at least have enough light so we can like shoot the scenes and that's it. But then when we got out there, the lighting scheme that Gavin, that you and Ryan and Emily put together was pretty damn elaborate. Like, can you talk about that a little bit? Like how you were able to do that and like where that idea came from to do it that way?
Well, part of it was out of necessity. We were trying to, like, a big part of night exteriors and the way they work is a big light from far away, covering enough area to give you exposure and not play as super direct. Like when you're outside, that's kind of what you're viewing, is either moonlight or just like kind of ambient light bouncing off clouds. And so that was kind of what we were trying to go for. And then just kind of adding exposure through side light to just give us a look. And the only way you can create dark on screen is with light, which is kind of paradoxical, but having something to read as a level, then to be able to show a darker area. So it was mostly around just trying to give us room to work in, because we only had, again, a crew of 2 trying to do a night exterior, which is pretty nuts. But they both killed it and worked really hard to give us an area to shoot in. And then it was about trying to make that area work for as many directions as we could. So like taking the backlight that might be stronger than your fill and then just switching scrims in both of them to do a quick reset to give us a different way to look and have it still feel like the same area, or the same night, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
But you had like 4 lights, like 20 feet in the air or something, right? Or is it 3? Like what was that? That was insane.
I mean, again, like I had, while we were shooting our daytime stuff, I had Emily setting up our nighttime stuff, which was another thing too, is like on a night exterior, as much as you can give your crew time to work in the daylight to be set up so that when it's night, they're not running in the snow, tripping on things with like trying to set up lights and stuff. But yeah, it was built around the general idea of just trying to be prepared to change if we needed to, be set to pan things in different ways to give us different backgrounds, and really simple, like kind of 3-point lighting, and like everything kind of breaks down to that. But you've got your backlight, you've got your fill, you've got your key or lack thereof, and it's just, like lack of fill. It was just about being prepared. I'm not entirely sure, like how we could have done it another way. I guess is just we lit our area so we could turn the camera around and look and have a different set. So it was just about trying to give us options later in the day and knowing which parts of where we were wasn't looking towards houses, so we can make it look like the middle of nowhere, and
right,
just trying to make this like one little area that we could shoot in as diverse and like moody as possible.
Let me just say, like, it totally worked, because I'm in post on it now, and just like watching that footage, like those night exteriors, like it's such a budget defying, it just looks amazing. And also just adding into that, just the complication of we had this like pretty limited patch of snow in the woods that we were filming on, so we were just kind of like keep having to like pivot the angle and make it seem like it's a much different stretch of woods, when in the film it feels like a huge area, but in reality like it's a pretty small area that we were shooting in. And yeah, like Gavin, Ryan, and Emily just did an amazing job with all of that.
Yeah, and then Sean, I wanted to ask you, like, so, imagine, so we got this lighting set up, we're shooting basically all night till like whatever it was, 4 a.m. in the cold. It's probably like 20 degrees, whatever it is. And you have 3 kills to do in this time. Like, what was your thought process going into shooting that? And like, how did you, like, when we were doing it and we were running out of time, like, what was your thought process and how were you able to like get everything that you needed in that amount of time?
I mean, I don't know how much I really had to do with it at that point. Like, I was pretty fried, I'll admit. Like, when it got to be like 2, 3, 4 a.m. and the only thing that was really driving me was kind of just this like animalistic, like, we need to make this day, because if we don't, like, honestly, like one of our talent was like on the shuttle to go to the airport immediately after we wrapped. And and I think the thing about doing a 12-day feature with really complicated effects is you need to be able to adapt. And I had all these precious shots that I wanted to get of like this whole tableau of this whole like murder scene where things are happening in the background. It's like, nope, we're cutting that. Like, just like, you have to just start cutting shots and just thinking about like, what are the key pieces that I need to make this work. And when someone watches it, they're not going to think about all these precious things that you weren't able to get. They're going to be reacting to like, oh, this looks great. They're going to see, as long as it's like coherent and you have the pieces you need. And, like, thanks to Gavin and the G&E team, like, it looks great. Like, honestly, it was pretty scary that last hour, because most of the hardest things had not been shot yet. But like, thankfully, again, just like we got pretty lucky with some of these effects working, and I think it's really like the collaborative thing where, we had talent like giving suggestions for how to, like, there was this one, we couldn't get Alrik's severed head to bleed enough. And it was finally like Nico who suggested, like, let me just like dunk it in fake blood and just hold it up in the air, and the residual like blood left on it will drip all over the place. And that's like the shot that we ended up using. And, I think like, I felt like speaking just for myself, like towards the end there, I was just, a combination of like the weather and just like how late it was, like I wasn't at 100%, but luckily like everyone, like we had this great family to kind of pick up the slack where I was like, definitely like, and I think that we got it done, but, I was just so thankful that, it wasn't entirely on my shoulders towards the end there. Like, I mean, that's, again, it's just like, that's why you prep, that's why you foster a collaborative environment on a set, because, we just had to get it done at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, from the AD's perspective, like, you basically were willing and like had made the decisions that you basically needed to make at that time in order to get it done. And have something to put together. Like we had a certain list of shots for each of these kills, and you basically almost without me having to suggest it, you basically would like just slim down to the one shot that you needed for it to work, or maybe the two shots. And so that's kind of how that last couple hours went. And that's how it was able to get done. And I just think you, under that pressure, you just made the right decisions when you had to. And I think that's kind of why it worked. Because, you know, in another world, like you could be like, no, like we have to get this, that, and that. I'm not going to move on until I get all these things for each one. And, you know, really lucky that you didn't do that, because that probably wouldn't have worked out so well. We would have had some big issues.
Well, I mean, like, part of the social contract that I asked people to enter on the movie was, you know, 12-day shoot, super low budget. You know, we have to have a good attitude and we can't be precious about things. And I took it very seriously that applies to me too. You know, it wouldn't have worked if I was being super precious and like egomaniacal about things when
Right.
that wasn't at all like the culture of the set. So like that's so I bought into that entirely too.
There was also just like the respect that you had for trying to keep us to 12-hour days, because, you know, each of these people was giving, you know, all they had for those 12 hours, and the actors were, you know, freezing their butts off, and like Nico had a lot to do, and so did Laura, in terms of just like both of them had some clothing changes that working in the cold was going to be a little difficult, and we did our best to guard them from it. But like part of that is keeping to the 12-hour days, and, you know, making it so that everyone's going home, because people also did have to, like, even though we were staying close to set, people did have to be driven home, and, you know, we were keeping it safe. And when it's 5 a.m. and you've been freezing for several hours and you're not making the best decisions, you know, it's just about keeping people's morale high and safe, and I think that really worked.
Yeah, totally. All right, so I think we should get to our final 5 questions. Liz, do you want to take the first one?
Yes. What's the first film y'all ever made, and how do you feel about it now?
And I think you should both answer separately. So Sean, go, and then Gavin, go.
Are we talking features or shorts?
Anything.
Yeah, first thing.
Well, appropriately for the cabin that we shot in, when I was 6, I made my first short at this cabin called The Invasion, which starred only my family members, and it was like in the wake of Independence Day, and I was obsessed with space aliens and already like knew I wanted to make movies, and I'm sure it's unwatchable now. Like my cousins and I like made like paper alien masks and like colored them with magic marker and basically like chased our cousins around the house and murdered them, which just goes to show you I have not come very far between 6 and 31 years old. So I guess that's my answer.
Gavin?
I kind of got into filmmaking in high school as a way to cut class, because the video class would let you check out a camera and go off campus. So a lot of my early stuff was me and my friends just making bad music videos of like chase scenes and like dance offs. I'd say we probably still have some good dance moves, but maybe the framing could have used some work looking back.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received? Sean, you go.
I think talk to your cinematographer.
Nice.
Before the shoot and during.
I love it. Gavin?
Something that kind of comes to mind, and like it's kind of a mixed thing, but a great gaffer, Craig Ryan, who I used to work with under a lot, would occasionally tell me, like, when I would come up with like a really kind of extravagant thing, or like a last minute like big ad or change that I wanted to do, he'd just say, "Hey Gavin, this isn't that show." And at the time, I took it as like kind of, you know, like you're being a little too extra right now. Calm down. But like, part of it too is just like each show has its own demands. Each story has like its own thing that needs to like happen to have the story be told. And sometimes that is a budget limitation that forces you in a direction that like maybe you have like this big amazing idea that like could work if you had the money and time, but the story, those aren't the building pieces that you're using to tell it. And so like when what you're working on isn't that show, you need to figure out what it is and make it work so the story still gets told in a way that you're happy about and that like services the story. So that kind of sticks with me a lot.
Nice.
I love that. What are your goals as filmmakers?
I mean, I think for me, if I'm able to just keep doing this, I mean, I'd be happy making Red Snows for the rest of my life, but I think the big thing for me is finding a way and I think that this is what everyone feels, is just like finding a way where you don't have to go the crowdsourcing micro budget route, not having to invest your own money, finding a way to kind of have more financial independence where you're still able to work with your friends and still able to do, you know, these fun horror things with like a certain degree of autonomy. I think that would really be my goal.
Yeah, similarly, I just want to continue to be able to help people tell amazing stories and get to work with like people that I really respect and have a good time like meshing with and helping tell their stories. Just it's really enjoyable to get to make something beautiful and extract something from someone's brain and put it onto video chips.
Nice. Video chips. If you could go back in time, what's the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I think that I definitely went through the film school thing of, I went in like a total genre movie kid, and then I came out thinking that genre movies are somehow less than, even if it was like a subconscious thing. So I think I would go to my college self and just be like, cut that shit out. Like, you know, you love genre movies. Like, a lot of times, like, the most meaningful stories can be told in the genre space. I mean, like, look at what Jordan Peele is doing. Like, he's made a whole career out of that. And it's like, you know, if genre is your thing, especially like horror, like own that, I would say. Because I definitely wasted a lot of time not making horror movies when it was always kind of my thing, you know? So I think just, you know, respect genre.
And something, I mean, I'm still kind of struggling with it, but like taking those times where you're not immediately working on set as someone who, you know, most of what they're doing is working on set or planning about working on set, but taking those times where things are a little slower, or like if you decided to say no to something, that's great because this is time for you to work on yourself and, you know, look back at like what you're not happy with your own performance or like what you could be doing better, and just work on being okay with those times where you're not working directly on set.
Finally, is making movies hard?
Yes, but it's worth it.
Yeah. It is very difficult, but like thankfully it's one of the coolest things about it is that it is this beautiful group activity where you do get to surround yourself with really cool people who make it, even though it's difficult, like a really, really joyful experience.
Awesome. That's fantastic, guys. So where should people go if they want to find out more about you or Red Snow or whatever? Sean, where should people go?
I think I have a website. I haven't updated it in a while, but it's just my name, SeanNicholsLynch.com. I need to put up some more stuff about Red Snow and stuff, but also, like, my first feature's out there, Prep School. I just actually saw that it's on IMDb TV, which is, like, ad-based. Like, you can just watch it for free. It just occasionally ads will intrude in, like, the least artful place imaginable. But, yeah, I think just I'm out there.
Nice. What about Red Snow? Does it have a Facebook page potentially?
Oh yeah. It's on. I believe it's just if you look up Red Snow movie on Facebook, and then our Twitter, or not Twitter. We don't have a Twitter. Our Instagram is Red Snow the movie, and there's a lot of. I tried to do at least one photo a day throughout the time we were shooting, and I saved a bunch of like stories and stuff that we did. So yeah, I definitely check that out if you want to see some cool vampire effects and that sort of thing. You could just check out our Instagram.
Nice. And then Gavin, what about you? Where can people find you?
I share a similar clever naming convention. It's GavinVMurray.com and also on Instagram. V is in Victor, although it stands for Velasquez.
Nice. V for Victor, but it's actually Velasquez. I love it. All right, guys. Well, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for being on the show.
I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, and I'll also just say it was a real pleasure making this movie with you guys, and I would do it a million more times over. It was so much fun, and I'm really proud of the work that we did. So thank you, Sean, for letting me be a part of this film.
Well, thanks for being a part of it. Like, it wouldn't have worked without you, Alrik.
Well, thanks for listening, and thanks to Gavin and Sean for coming back on the show and talking about Red Snow. I also want to do a little subliminal plug here, or not subliminal, totally bliminal, whatever that is, for Gavin's podcast, Is This Still Good? Which I've been on 3 times now, and I'm going to be on the Christmas episode. And basically, the whole part of the whole podcast is basically about movies from childhood that we loved when we were kids, and then watching them now and debating okay, are they still good? Do they still hold up? And then we did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we did the Mission Impossible movies, the first 3, and then the other one I did with them was Jingle All the Way.
Ooh. My friends Laura and Marshall had a podcast just like that called Do I Still Love It?
Nice.
But I think they stopped.
Oh, really?
So, who knows?
This is one of those coronavirus podcasts that popped up when everyone went on, on lockdown.
Yeah.
But they're still going strong. They actually, just hint, they mentioned they want to have you on to talk about some movies. So yeah.
Yes.
I said that you'd probably be down.
Always. Anytime anyone asks me to do something, I'm like, yes.
But anyways, go check out Is This Still Good? As well as just check out Gavin and Sean as filmmakers. They're both very talented. Gavin's shot, I think, 3 features now. Sean's directed 2. He's sure to direct many more. You can also check out our website at makingmoviesishard.com, where you can find links to the things we talked about in this episode, including some of Gavin and Sean's work. Sean also has a podcast. This isn't fair. I have to plug Sean's podcast. He has a podcast called Tapeheads, which I've also been on to talk about Terminator. And this is a very similar style podcast, but instead it's all VHS. So a guest brings a VHS over, and then we actually watch the VHS together in Sean's house with his wife, Lindsay, and they do the show together. And then we talk about it right after we watch the movie. So I like Sean and Lindsay's approach a little bit, because it's they actually force you to watch the movie together.
Yes.
And they made me breakfast when I came over. It was very nice.
Not to ruin them again, but that's what Marshall and Laura did on their Do I Still Love It podcast. They forced you to watch it with them. They should all get together. Gavin, Sean, Laura, Marshall, and have a mega just have a super group podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how many podcasts within this relative sector of or I don't know, theme of a podcast there are. There are probably hundreds of podcasts that do this exact same thing. So if you have a podcast that you do this, share it with us. I'd love to hear about it. But if you want to get in contact with us, even to share that podcast, you can send us an email to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com, or you can just tweet at us on Twitter, Facebook, and or Instagram at MMIH Podcast. I am Alrik B on Twitter and Instagram. And Liz, where are you?
I'm Liz Manishaw on Twitter, stumbling towards 2,000 followers, and Liz Manishaw Film on Instagram.
What are you at, 1,950 or something, or?
No, 1915. I'm two followers away from a good movie.
There you go. I love it. If you want, you could also tell a friend about the show. Just tell a friend. Tell them that you should find this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere. But you can also go to the same places, iTunes or Stitcher, and leave us a review, or even just a rating. You don't even have to write any words. You can just rate us 5 stars and go along with your day. It's very fast. I've done it before. And then also thanks to me for editing this episode. Hopefully on time this time, knock on wood.
Thanks, Alrik. Thanks for editing.
And then talk to you guys next week. Oh, we should also say happy holidays. Happy New Year. This is our New Year's episode.
Happy 2021.
Yes, happy 2021. The theme I'm hearing is that 2021 is going to be better than 2020 no matter what happens. So let's all have a good start to 2021 and hope things actually are better.
They couldn't not be.
Yes.
Done.
Cut.
Welcome to Making Moves is Hard, the podcast about the struggles of being an everyday independent filmmaker. Crap, I can't just ruin that. I have to say the exact thing. All right.
We had no blooper last week because there was nothing to pick from, so now we'll have a blooper for this one.
Yeah, at the very least, I've contributed that. Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggles of the independent filmmaker. Shit, I keep on fucking that up. I'm going to do it one more time and it's going to be perfect. The struggle of being